Welcome back to Arcade. I am Super Tommy, and in this video we are going to look at creating your very first Phaser 3 game in TypeScript. So we're actually going to use this guide from the official Phaser website. If you're making your first Phaser 3 game, that guide uses vanilla JavaScript. So we're going to go to TypeScript instead if you're new to Phaser, but you want to use TypeScript for all the nice typing features that it has. So we're going to follow this tutorial basically one for one, but replace the JavaScript with TypeScript. So let's get started. I want to put myself in the middle of the screen. So here we are. So we're going to actually make a folder. We're going to start from an empty folder. We're going to make a folder on our computer here. So we're going to go, no, not going to make a folder. So we're going to start with the Phaser 3 parcel template that we have at Arcade. So you can find it at github.com/arcade. This is our GitHub page with various code repositories, including some templates, but we're going to use this Phaser 3 parcel template. Now, to install, we're going to use Degit instead of this git clone. You could do git clone, and that would be fine. You know what? We'll just use git clone to show. So we're going to do git clone this, and then the folder we want to put it in. So let's do git clone. That's the URL that I just copied. And we're going to put it in a folder named, let's see, first Phaser 3 TypeScript. It's going to clone it. So cd first Phaser 3 TypeScript. There it is. Now we're going to do npm install. Just like it says here. Now you do need to have parcel installed, so do that right here if you don't have parcel installed. So parcel is parceljs.org. Yeah. So parcel is a super fast zero config web application bundler. So what that means, well, if you're going to use TypeScript, you probably have some web development background, but if not, when you make web apps, you need a dev server to serve it when you're making it locally. And then you can also use Parcel and other similar bundlers to take all your code, turn it into one smaller file to serve, or multiple files to serve. So Parcel makes it easy, and TypeScript just works in Parcel. Nothing fancy to configure. Parcel will do it all for you. That's why we love Parcel. So there's that. We did the install. So now this template, of course, comes with some files already, and it is in JavaScript. So we do need to add this TypeScript file, this tsconfig file for TypeScript. So just to test, we're going to do npm run start to make sure that our game is working. So Parcel is building and spinning up our dev server. It will be at localhost 8000 when it's ready. There we go. And there it is. So that is what it starts out with. A very simple Parcel, very simple starter for Phaser. So now we're actually going to change this to use TypeScript. So let's stop it. So let's open the folder we just made. So Phaser 3, first Phaser 3 TypeScript, open. All right, so let's see. So see, these are all JS files. So we're going to turn these into TypeScript files by renaming them TS. Now in our index file, it references main.js, so we just got to do main TS. We have this hello world scene. So for now, we're just going to change that to TS. Great. Now let's, out here, make a new file, tsconfig.json. Now you can basically just copy this from the GitHub repository All right. Okay. So because TypeScript allows JavaScript, or at least in our specific case, we're saying allow JS to true. The code should just work. So let's bring up our terminal again. npm run start. Since TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, any JavaScript should work in TypeScript. So now you see Parcel is installing TypeScript for us because it sees that we're using TypeScript files. Okay, refresh. Looks good. Let's just bring up our console here to make sure we don't miss any errors. Great. Now I'm just going to move myself here to the right. All right. So we've got this hello world example set up. TypeScript is running. Got our main. Let's go back to this phaser tutorial. So let's see. So there's a zip file. Let's download this zip file. I think there are some assets in it. Okay. Yes, there are some assets. So we see these assets. Now, in our project, in this template specifically, we're using this Parcel plugin static files, which is described here. So any static assets for this project setup, we're going to put in a public folder. So let's just go back to VS Code. At the root here, outside of source, we're going to make a new folder, call it public. And then we can just move all the files from assets. Let's just reveal in Finder. So we can copy these files that we just downloaded from the phaser tutorial right here and put it into an assets folder just to match what that tutorial does. Put these files in there and we're good. We can see here are the assets, so that's that. Great. I don't need this. Okay, so this is the config which we have right here. And so for TypeScript, we can actually give it a type because this is actually a phaser dot types dot config dot core dot game config. So now that's going to give us some help. So if we do that, right, so you can see the various settings or properties that this config takes. So TypeScript gives us that code completion with VS Code. So that's really nice and one of the great reasons to use TypeScript. So now, so they have this scene. We're going to just call this the hello world scene. So let's just go here. Let's collapse this. See more code. What you're going to delete this getting started code just to match. So they have an update. We'll just make an update as well. All right. Okay. Yep. So it explains the config. If you don't know about the config, do read that. But we're gonna keep going. So now we're going to preload some images, or preload the images that we got. So we're going to do this dot load dot image. So we'll call it sky, and it's also going to be an assets sky dot png. So what happens in this project, just save this, is that any files you put into public folder gets copied directly to the dist folder when you run, and so then Parcel will serve out a file at localhost 8000 /assets /bomb.png, for example. So we can more or less just copy this, but I do recommend that if you're just getting started to type it out so you sort of get some not muscle memory, but sort of you get a feel for exactly what you're doing instead of just copy and pasting and not really registering with your brain what's going on. So I'm going to do image star right? Assets star.png. We're doing these paths because they're in the public folder. We're doing another image. This key is the name of the texture that we're loading. Png. And then we're going to load the sprite sheet. So loading a sprite sheet is how we have animations. So let's see. So assets dude.png, frame width 32, frame height 48. So naturally, when you do decide to use your own assets, these numbers will be different. But basically, you can see here, dude is a spreadsheet of animations or of frames, and then some of these frames together is an animation. So there's like a walk left and walk right, and then idle. So we've done the preload. Yeah, depending on how you want to format your code, I guess you could also do it this way. It's a little bit more readable. All right, so now that's the preload. Now let's follow through here. I'm going to display the sky. So this .add .image 400 300 sky. Now let's see. We've got the sky. Now by and large, so far you see there's very little difference. We do have a class here, right? So this is of course something TypeScript lets you do, modern JavaScript as well, versus the tutorial that has just functions standalone that are then passed into the config. Okay. Yep. You can definitely read through this to get a feel for how Phaser itself works. All right, so now let's add a star just to follow along here. This .add .image 400 300 star. So we got a sky, and I'm going to put a star right in the middle of the sky, and there you have it. As you can see, if you're new to Phaser, Phaser is extremely easy to use. You can read it, it's very concise, it's very readable, and it does a lot of work for you. All right, so next here we are going to build some platforms for our player to eventually walk around on. So here we go. So here in this code, platforms is a global variable, but we're going to keep it in our class. So TypeScript lets us do that. We can set private variables, which is what we're going to do in this case. So here, let's just declare a private platforms, and it's going to be something. What will it be? A static group. So it's going to be phaser.physics.arcade.static group. Now, one thing you can do, well, at least with TypeScript, is because we're not setting this in the constructor in Phaser, at least. I think I've seen this in upcoming Phaser 4 written in TypeScript. You will be able to set things in the constructor, but in Phaser 3, that is not the case. So TypeScript will complain that it's not clear this will always be set. So we're going to just do it. You could use exclamation to just tell TypeScript, don't worry, I got it covered. It's going to exist. We're going to use question mark to say, okay, it may be undefined. And then we'll have to handle that in our code. We're going to delete this star. We do not need it for now. And I'm going to do this.platforms, this.physics.add.static group. Great. And then this.platforms.create 405,568 round. Oops. So that's next round. Then we're going to do set scale. What does this return? It returns us an any. What is it expected to return? Let's see. Phaser.io. Now, why is this giving us an any? See, any is not useful. We don't want any. Let's see. Let's go to the Phaser docs. We're doing physics add. So physics. the physics arcade factory. We're doing a static group. All right, what is it supposed to return? A static group. Okay, we'll just do this as, I guess, which one's nicer? I guess it's up to, I think I prefer this. Phaser.physics.arcade.static group. It's a little longer. Why is it complaining? Okay, I guess we could do it this way. Fair enough. Set, so let's come back. Right, it's still, okay. Group, so now we have a group variable const with that we're specifically defining as static group. So let's do group.setScale. Is that not a thing? Platforms.create .static group. Oh no, what am I doing? I was reading the wrong line. My bad. So static group. Let's go to create. All right, what does this return? It returns the new game object, usually a sprite. Yes. Yes. So we're just gonna call, so it's gonna make one platform. So let's call this ground, since we're making a ground. And it's going to be as phaser, usually a sprite, so we'll just say it's a sprite. Game objects. Although it may actually be an image, because it's not being animated. We'll see how this goes. We could log it out in the console and see exactly what it is. We'll do that in a minute. Set scale, so I believe it was 2 according to this tutorial, 2. And then refresh body. Dot set scale. Dot, what does set scale return? A sprite. What if it's image? Nope. So let's see here, refresh body. It's on image, arcade image. Oh, all right. Right, we're getting it from a physics static group, so naturally it will actually be physics dot arcade dot sprite. All right, dot refresh body. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so of course sometimes some of you may see that this may look nicer. That trying to do TypeScript or modern JavaScript and Phaser may be a little bit difficult, given that some of the examples don't necessarily match with what you're seeing in VS Code if you're using VS Code, and the autocomplete gives you different stuff. But it can be figured out, especially over time, but hopefully these tutorials help you out with that. So we did that. Now let's do the rest of these grounds. So we'll put one at 600, 400 ground, this dot platforms dot create 50, 250 ground, this dot platforms dot create 750, 220 ground. So ideally we would actually use a constant key for this ground. We may change that later. So now we've done this create. Let's take a look. There's our green grounds. It looks pretty good. There's no errors. Okay, so that's how that's set up. But for us, we don't need to do, we need to do this. Although this may be set up, we don't need to set up this scene, this preload create update functions, because we're using a scene class. Let's just double check. So our gravity was 200. We'll just match the tutorial for 300. Debug false. So you could turn on debug, and Phaser has this nice bounding boxes that it'll show you. As you can see, these blue lines, you can probably see, around our floors. It's very handy to make sure that your physics are actually doing as you intend, or the boxes at least. Okay, So that's that. And all right, so that's it for this part. Be sure to come back for the next part as we continue the making your first Phaser 3 game in TypeScript. So be sure to subscribe for more great Phaser content.